him out of his cage. And they put that little tie on him, too.
Get your hands off him.
What in the good goddamn we got here, fellas?
Hand him over. We walk out, won't be a problem.
He ain't going nowhere. We need a Brillo pad to wash his dishes with.
Listen, assholes, do yourselves a favor and let him go.
Say it nice.
I just said it nice.
And you?
I'm gonna put a bullet right in the middle of your thick skull.
The year is 1962, and we see people enjoying a lively evening at a New York nightclub. Among them is a bouncer named Tony Lip. Suddenly, a fight breaks out, and two men start brawling.
Tony Lip!
You put your hands on me, you punk?
Later, as the club closes, Tony and his co-workers learn that the nightclub is shutting down, which means they'll all have to find new jobs. Afterward, everyone heads home for the night. The next morning, Tony wakes up and finds two black workers in his house, doing some repairs. His wife kindly offers them water in their household glasses. But this was 1962, a time when racial segregation and discrimination were still deeply rooted. And Tony doesn't like the idea of black men drinking from their glasses, so he secretly throws them away, reflecting the same prejudices most white people held back then. Soon after, Tony receives a call about a driving job. Desperate for work, he goes in for the interview, only to be surprised when he sees a black man living in luxury, something unheard of in that era, when black people were mostly treated as slave. This man is Dr. Don Shirley, a world-class musician. But Tony can't understand why a musician calls himself Doctor, and he doesn't show Don much respect. Then Don explains that he needs someone to join him on a 2-month concert tour through the Deep South, not just as a driver but also as a personal assistant to take care of his clothes and shoes.
Good luck, Doc. Tony, I had my record label ask around town to find me the right man. Your name came up more than once, and that is why I called and inquired about your availability.
So Tony agrees to drive but refuses to do any extra task.
Well, Mr. Vallalonga, thank you for stopping by.
Later, at home, Tony tells his wife about Don, describing him as a strange man who dressed in unusual clothes and kept his home filled with exotic animal artifacts.
He's colored? Well, you wouldn't last a week with him.
For the right money, I would.
The next morning, Dr. Don calls Tony and officially hires him as his driver. And Tony accepts the job, which requires him to make sure Don gets to every performance on time across different cities, and to be back in New York by Christmas Eve. Then Don's assistant hands Tony the car keys along with a book titled The Green Book. This book guide listed hotels and restaurants where black travelers were allowed to stay and eat, since segregation laws meant they were often denied entry at regular establishments. Along with Don, 2 other musicians were also part of the tour, though they followed behind in a separate car. Then Don was ready to leave, but Tony refused to carry his luggage, simply staring at the bags until one of Don's servants placed them in the car. Finally, their 2-month journey began. True to his nature, Tony started it off with food, eating constantly and smoking cigarettes, something Don strongly disliked.
Could you put out the cigarette, please?
What?
I can't breathe back here.
But Tony also carried himself with arrogance around Don. Their first stop was Pennsylvania, where Don had his opening performance. Before the show, the host introduced Don, explaining why he was called Doctor.
He holds doctorates in psychology, in music, and in the liturgical arts. And he has performed at the White House twice in the past 14 months.
Then the audience soon discovered his brilliance as Don sat at the piano and began to play, mesmerizing everyone with his music. Even Tony was deeply moved by the performance. For the first time, he felt genuine respect for Don and became a fan of his music. The performance was a huge success, and the crowd adored him. Later, while Don mingled with the audience inside, Tony joined the staff in a gambling game, something Don strongly disapproved of.
Next time you need extra money, just ask me.
More fun winning it.
And what if you lost?
I don't lose.
The next morning, their journey continues, and this time Tony and Don begin having small conversations in the car. At one stop, Tony goes into a shop to grab some food and notices colorful stones on display. But one green stone had fallen to the ground, and Tony picks it up, slipping it into his pocket. But Salim, one of Don's band members, sees this and tells Don about it. and Don, being a man of strict principles, doesn't like it at all.
You stole a jade stone from the store.
I didn't steal no stone.
Pay for the stone, Tony. You'll feel better.
I feel fine. And I ain't paying for no regular rock I found in the dirt.
Do not drive, Mr. Vallelonga. Put it back.
Tony resists at first, but eventually he is forced to pay, which leaves him irritated. They move on to their next destination, where Tony inspects Don's performance setup. To his frustration, there's no chair for Don, and the piano is covered in trash. So Tony complains to a worker.
But it's a piece of shit. And there's garbage in it. So take it out. What'd you say?
You heard me.
You got 2-3 hours. Just get a clean Steinway in here.
I bet there's not 2 Steinways in the whole state of Indiana.
I guess you better move your ass in.
Who you think you're talking to, greaseball?
Then the next day, Don is finally seen performing on a Steinway piano, seated properly, and the audience is completely captivated by his music, and Tony too enjoys every note. As the shows continue one after another, Tony and Don keep traveling further south, and slowly their relationship begins to shift. Tony starts to like Don, and Don starts to warm up to Tony as well. Along the way, they begin sharing personal stories. Tony often talks about his family, while Don gradually opens up about himself too. Then on the road, they spot a fried chicken shop, and since Tony eats constantly, he stops to grab some. As usual, he starts eating while driving, but this time he insists that Don try it. But Don refuses repeatedly. He has never eaten chicken and doesn't like it, but Tony pressures him so much that Don finally gives in and eats.
What do we do about the bones?
We'll do this.
Pick it up, Tony.
Nature takes care of the earth.
Pick it up.
Then their journey continues until they arrive in a city called Kentucky, where they check into a Negro hotel listed in the Green Book. Don grows restless and decides to take a walk, but outside, a group of white men surround him in a bar. They beat him up, claiming there's no way a black man could afford a fine suit unless he stole it. Just then, Tony shows up.
Listen, assholes, do yourselves a favor and let him go.
You?
Maybe.
Afterward, Tony warns him never to go anywhere without him again. But Don, still shaken,
Do you really have a gun?
Of course not.
the next night, Don delivers another brilliant performance, and soon after, they hit the road again. Along the way, their car breaks down near a field where black slaves are working. The slaves stare in disbelief at the sight. Tony, a white man, fixing the car, while Don, a black man in a suit, stands calmly by. In those days, such a scene was unthinkable, as black people were usually seen only as laborers or slaves. Once the car is fixed, they continue on to North Carolina, where Don has his next performance. After the concert, a fancy dinner is arranged, and the hosts prepare fried chicken especially for him. But when Don goes to use the restroom, he is humiliated. They tell him he can't use the indoor facilities and must go outside to a filthy wooden outhouse instead,
I'd prefer not to use that.
and goes back to his hotel room and uses the bathroom there before returning to finish the evening. The next day, during their journey, Tony and Don stop for a meal. While sitting there, Tony begins writing a letter to his wife, but as usual, he fills it with silly and meaningless details, like how he washed his socks and dried them on the TV. After reading Tony's clumsy writing, Don finally offers to help. He dictates a beautifully written letter, full of emotion and poetry, which Tony copies down. When Tony's wife later receives it, she is deeply touched and loves it. Then their journey continues, and they arrive in Georgia earlier than expected, so the two go out for a walk. During the walk, Don notices a suit displayed in a shop window and decides he wants to buy it. They step inside, and the store clerk hands the suit to Tony to try on. So Tony gives it to Don, but as Don prepares to try it, the clerk suddenly snatches it away.
Excuse me, you're not allowed to try that on.
I see.
Simply because he is black. Both Don and Tony feel insulted and angry, so they walk out without saying anything. That night, as always, Don performs brilliantly, and the audience enjoys every moment. Later, while Tony is in his hotel room, he receives a call from the police about Don. He rushes over only to find Don in a humiliating situation, beaten badly by the officers. This time, Tony cleverly bribes the police to get Don released. But Don hates that Tony resorted to paying them off,
Tonight I saved your ass. So show a little appreciation, maybe.
and the two argue bitterly. The next day, they head to a town called Sten, where Don has another performance scheduled. They stop in front of a fine hotel, and as they get out of the car, some of Tony's old friends recognize him. They mock him, asking if he lost a bet, since he's working for a black man. So Tony tells them that Don is his boss. But his friends then tempt him, saying they can get him a better job with higher pay, but Tony refuses, saying he's already making good money. Before leaving, they tell Tony to meet them at 8 p.m. that night. That night, as Tony is leaving his room, Don stops him and asks where he's going.
I'm just going downstairs to have a drink.
But Don suspects he might be meeting his old friends to quit the job, so he asks Tony to hear him out first.
I think you're doing a wonderful job. I'd like to formally offer you the position of my road manager. That also means a raise in pay.
But Tony refuses, saying he doesn't want anything else and he's not going anywhere. He'll stay with Don until this 2-month trip is over. Then Don apologizes for what happened the previous night, and the two sit down together, talking for hours. By now, they genuinely like each other, enjoy working together, and have developed real respect for one another. Don also continues helping Tony write letters to his wife, and soon Tony's wife and even her friends adore the beautiful words.
John!
Yeah.
I want a letter.
Then the tour continues with a performance in Kansas City, then another city, and another after that. By this point in their long journey, Tony and Don have become true friends, and Christmas is getting closer. And back home, Tony's family is preparing for the holiday, and Don remembers the promise he made that he would have Tony home by Christmas Eve. On the way to their next show, heavy rain begins to pour, and suddenly the police stop their car. The officers can't believe a white man would be working for a black man, or that a black man could be riding in the back seat of a car.
Hey, what kind of name is that?
It's Italian.
That's why you driving him around. You half a nigger yourself.
For that reason, they arrest both of them. Inside the jail, Don demands his right to call his lawyer. The officers finally allow him to make a phone call. Shortly afterward, the police station receives a call from a high-ranking official ordering them to release Dr. Don Shirley and Tony immediately and to make sure they aren't troubled again. This time, it's Don who manages to get them out of trouble without paying off. After going through so many hardships, Tony and Don arrive at a hotel listed in the Green Book, where they have to share a single room. But Tony starts smoking, which Don dislikes. That night, Tony writes the last letter of the trip to his wife all on his own, without Don's help. The next day, Don has his final performance scheduled for December 23rd in Alabama. He is welcomed warmly, but when it's time to change clothes, he isn't given a proper dressing room just because he's a black man. Instead, they tell him to use a storage room. This deeply bothers Tony, but both men remain silent. Later, at the dinner before the concert, food is served for all the workers and drivers, but Don, the evening star, is told he cannot dine there because of his race. After an argument that goes nowhere, Tony and Don walk out in anger. Don then asks Tony if he's hungry, and Tony admits he's starving. So Don takes him to a Negro hotel. Everyone there stares strangely because a white man has walked in with a black man wearing a suit. They both sit down to eat, and soon a woman working there notices Don's elegant clothes.
What you do, all dressed up like that?
He's only the greatest piano player in the world.
Show me.
Then Don sits at the piano and pours his heart into the music. The crowd enjoys it immensely, and for the first time that night, both Tony and Don feel pure joy. Among the poor guests, two men think of robbing them, but Tony quickly pulls out his gun and scares them off.
Don't ever flash your water cash in a bar.
I knew you had a gun.
Soon after, they set off through heavy rain and snow toward New York City, where Tony's family eagerly awaits him for Christmas Eve. On the way, their car gets a flat tire, and once again the police arrive. But this time, instead of arresting them, the officers kindly help to fix the tire, and Tony and Don continue the drive. The snow is falling heavily, roads are covered, but Don is determined to get Tony home on time. Finally, Don's car stops outside Tony's house. It's Christmas Eve, but Tony is asleep in the back seat while Don is the one driving.
You're home. Get inside.
Wait. Come up and meet my family.
Merry Christmas, Tony.
Merry Christmas.
Inside, Tony's family jumps with joy at his arrival. Meanwhile, Don returns to his apartment, but he can't stop thinking about Tony. A little while later, Tony's doorbell rings, and Don is standing outside. Seeing him there, Tony's face lights up, and his whole family welcomes Don warmly. When their journey had begun 2 months earlier, they didn't even like each other. But by the time they returned, they had become true friends for life.